Ezekiel 22 and 23. I want to go back to chapter 20, verses 40 and 41, just for a brief point to be seen. For on my holy mountain, there, now think of where we are in the story. We are in Babylon, living on a plain, no temple, no tabernacle, no priests, no holy artifacts. The people are trying to figure out how to live by Yahweh in a distant land. Then it says this, for on my holy mountain, there all the house of Israel shall serve me. Now quite a promise, right? Because I'm living in Babylon, but I have this promise that on my holy mountain, that's Jerusalem, Israelites will serve him. I will accept you as a sweet aroma when I bring you out from the peoples and gather you out of the countries where you have been scattered, and I will be hallowed in you before the Gentiles. When we hear that sweet aroma, we get the feeling, well, there must be a temple then, because if we're going to have a sacrifice that gives that sweet aroma story of the Old Testament sacrifice, then all these pictures must have been in the people's minds of someday there will be a temple in Jerusalem. Will it look like the one we used to have? Might have been on their minds, those kind of things. And the point I bring it up is I just want you to remember this for chapters 40 through 48 of Ezekiel yet to come, because we will have this vision of, you guessed it, a temple. And it's answering this prophecy of 20 verse 40. So hold on to that. But for this time, this is in Ezekiel 22 verse 30. This is the first of two brief stories or parables, I guess you could say. The Greek and Hebrew word for parable means short story. In 22 verse 30, so I sought for a man. Now and the picture is the walls of Jerusalem were being breached during the days of Babylon, when they were coming in and laying siege to the city in 586. And I'm sure many people were furiously running around trying to repair breaches in the wall as Babylon was trying to overthrow the city. And God gives this brief story of what that was like. So I sought for a man among them who would make a wall and stand in the breach before me on behalf of the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none. And so this, again, a very short story or a word picture of a man who could stand in the breach. Some versions have gap. Someone to stand in the gap. As though the only thing keeping, think of the story, the only thing keeping Babylon from Israel, from Jerusalem, was one person, who, if one person had put their finger in the dike, as it were, this whole problem wouldn't have happened. Of course, that's just the story, and it was much deeper than that. But that's an interesting little picture. In fact, let's apply that now. The idea of one person, as it were, and I like to use that word slot idea, because we have seen it before where we've heard that someday Israel would worship God and David, their king. And I called it the Messiah slot, the idea that some human being, not David, obviously, because he's dead, but some human being would be worshipped alongside Yahweh. That must have been in the mind of the Jew, because it's in the text. It's back in Jeremiah. And here we have another picture where, as Israel is awaiting the end of, we call it exile, right? God is punishing the people through this time period that we have come to call the exile. That getting them through that time period, a picture of a person, and let's call it a slot again, that there is going to be someone who will aid in Israel coming out of exile into a new period of their life. And could that be a person even that the New Testament will describe? Obviously, as Christians, we know who that one person will be. But that's, again, a kind of a preachment, an Old Testament story that we can see coming into the New Testament. Someone to stand at the breach of the wall, ready to hold it up so that God's will can be once again formed around his people. But there's a second quick story in chapter 23. Son of man, there were two women, the daughter of one mother. Their names, O-Allah, so two girls, O-Allah, and the other O-Aliva. One meaning Olava, or Olaha, meaning my tent, and O Aliva, meaning my tent is in it, or my tent is in her. The idea of a tent being in, here's the point. This is Samaria, we're told. This woman is pictured as Samaria, and this girl is pictured as Jerusalem. Now, why did this picture work in the minds of the hearer? These are the capital cities, of course, of the northern and the southern kingdom. What did these two girls do in the story? Well, what did these two nations do in the story? Chapter 23, verse 9, therefore I have delivered Samaria into the hand of her lovers, into the hand of the Assyrians. Who destroyed Samaria? The Assyrians. And it's pictured as Samaria, or this girl, wanting Samaria as her lover. 23:17, then the Babylonians came to Jerusalem into the bed of love. The same picture. A girl is pictured as wanting someone, pictured as a lover, who she invites. This would be Babylon, and she is unfaithful in the sense of being, they should have been faithful to one man, but they were faithful to someone else. 25, and again you can see where this is going. I will set my jealousy against you. If there's one word we have heard that defines the God, and it fits the story so well of the Old Testament, he's not jealous just because he, as though that's a blot against his character. It's a jealousy that's driven by wanting worship because, well, let's read on as to why his jealousy is a good thing. For they have committed adultery, and blood is on their hands. They have committed adultery with their idols, and even sacrificed their sons, whom they bore to me, passing them through the fire to devour them. We've seen this before. But the story is, again, so here are the two stories. I looked for one person to stop the breach in the wall, couldn't find any. I had two daughters that were born to one God, as it were, and they were both faithless. Had they not been faithless, had they not gone after these other lovers, they would not have sacrificed their own children. Here's the picture really of the exile. They would not have sacrificed their own children to the fire. So in both stories we have destruction that is going to come upon the people because of, in both pictures, I couldn't find a person, and I had two daughters who were faithless. I want to add one more thing, though, that back in chapter 22, verse 15, we read this: I will scatter you among the nations, disperse you through the countries, and remove your filthiness completely from you. We have to remember that besides destruction, one of the purposes of the exile, in fact, I think the main purpose, is discipline. We are bringing people from a situation into a better situation. So if we just push on this idea of destruction, we may miss what really is going on in the story of exile in the Old Testament, that again Jesus will answer. And the New Testament largely will be how Jesus brings his people out of exile as a time not really just of destruction, but it will be a time of discipline.